Hey, David Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of ZZ Top. And of course, we're going to be talking about the legendary Billy Gibbons. And it looks like a lot of you on social media are checking out the ZZ Top documentary that came out last year. And of course, in 2019, they celebrated their 50th anniversary, which is really cool. And ZZ Top's a legendary, popular, phenomenal band, very gritty and bluesy and just swampy, and I mean there's all this great energy coming from their music. And Billy's a legend. I mean, he's an absolute electric guitar legend. He has early connections with Hendrix, kind of met him backstage I think at a show in Texas, and actually Jimmy gave him a Stratocaster famously. And there's a kind of a rumor that Billy Gibbons used his pink Strat that was a gift from Hendrix in the studio on a lot of ZZ Top's music. And even though he has, a huge, massive guitar collection, there have been several people that have commented that he kind of secretly uses that guitar in the studio. He doesn't really tour with it because it's used and abused and all scratched up. But dig around on the internet and see if you can find, stories about Billy Gibbons and the pink Strat that was a gift from Jimi Hendrix. That's a cool story. I just shared that image, with some album cover artwork. And for those of you watching this that haven't heard their first album, ZZ Top's first album, you have to check that album out. I was exposed to it, years and years and years ago, and then time kind of got away from me. And then I guess it was about like 3 or 4 years ago, I revisited that album, and it just blew me away all over again. I thought, this is their debut. They just came out swinging, and they already had their sound, their style. That's a killer album, full of energy, great riffs, great solos, great songs. And it's really impressive that, there's certain groups like that where they came out with their debut and just knocked it completely, out of the park. It's amazing. But for those of you watching this, obviously I'm going to be talking about chords and rhythm from Billy Gibbons and ZZ Top. But if you want some lead, ideas and material to work on, I did have a lesson in Guitar Player magazine last year. It was the Warren Haynes issue, but there was a Billy Gibbons lesson that I wrote, and basically that kind of broke down, some of the licks and lead secrets and the pentatonic, highway on the fretboard, and that would give you a little bit more insight into, Billy's lead style, which is, definitely phenomenal and worth checking out. But then also, his rhythm work is very exciting, and you can pick up a lot of interesting things from working on, his rhythms and riffs and songs. So here we go. The opening, that was Nasty Dogs and Funky Kings, which is from Fandango, and it's a killer song, great tune. That's a great album too. But it begins with this, kind of A minor blues run. And then he does a lower run, and he ends on the note F, which is like the flat 6, if you're thinking of the key of A. And then he starts doing the kind of beefy open position riff, which Billy definitely has a history of doing, riffs like that. So it's something like this. Right there you can see we're basically walking down A minor blues. And then he answers that with a lower phrase. And there's that F right there, which just stands out. It's kind of unusual. It doesn't naturally appear in the regular minor pentatonic or blues scale. So that note just kind of pings your ear like, whoa. And then he walks into, an A power chord. And there you can see he's basically pulling off that C to the open A. Something like that. And he's also grabbing that double stop right there on the 5th fret on the D and the G. And technically over A, that would imply A minor 7. Really clever the way he kind of sneaks that in there. definitely Billy has a history of, riffs like that. Think of LaGrange, of course. But he's just kind of twisting it a little bit differently. Really cool song, and I like that riff too. It's gritty and bluesy, and yeah, cool, really cool stuff. All right, up next is Cheap Sunglasses from DeGuelo, and this is a very famous song, of course, and a really cool guitar part. Got the chord slide in the beginning, and then some hybrid picking with that bluesy, kind of lower part, something like this. See, we're kind of sliding, an A major triad to a B flat major triad in the beginning, like that. And for a long time, I couldn't understand, where that came from. I thought, how is Billy, using that? But then I realized that the B flat major triad is actually the top part of G minor 7. So the song's in G, right? But when you hear that part, it's basically, implying G minor 7, which is really clever. So Billy's one of those players you really have to watch, what he plays and what he does, because he doesn't play any filler. It's all killer, and he definitely just, he doesn't waste any notes or any chords, and he's very on top of what he's playing. And even on songs that sound simple, and you're like, well, sounds like he's just playing the same, 3 chords or whatever. But he always sneaks like little fills and little clever ideas like that, where, on the surface, you don't really notice what he did. But then when you really get in there and look at it and analyze it, it's like, wow, that's really cool. So slide that little triad, and then for the hybrid picking here, you're just grabbing, G and F on the low E string with the open D. And then it's also going to move over where you've got C and B flat on the A with the open G string. Something like that. And then he starts playing, with those hybrid pick parts. Starts flirting with this little C octave. Something like that. Next we have Sure Got Cold After the Rain Fell, which is from Rio Grande Mud, and it's a slow blues, great song, but it's really slow, and there's some great, lead that Billy plays in the song, and the song itself is beautiful, but we're just going to look at the chord part behind it, which is this really slow, kind of arpeggiated chord progression, like this. And we got a D over A, and then A7, and then back to that D over A. So it's, there's 4 chords, but it just kind of moves back and forth like that. Song too, so check that out if you're not familiar with that one. Okay, up next we have I Thank You from DeGuelo, and there's some slash chords that we're manipulating here and some other kind of hidden surprises, something like this. See, we're kind of doing like a C over A, and he kind of answers that with the D over A, and then back to that C over A again. And then it's basically a G over A with the open strings, and then an A power chord right there. And then he starts doing this kind of hybrid picked double stop bend. Actually, I'm kind of finger picking there, actually. Just kind of plucking it there with my middle and third finger. You can also hybrid pick it too. And I think I just ended up doing it that way. Well, it just sounds a little bit more like Billy for some reason. And then he starts playing with that A octave. That's just basically the open A to F, slide that to F sharp, and then grab the F sharp octave, on the D string, and then a G on the low E, a G octave on the D string, and then A flat, and then the A flat octave on the D string. Really cool. Up next we've got Waitin For The Bus from Tres Hombres, and this is a very, famous song for sure. And he's kind of playing, like drones with the open A string and fretted notes on the D. And we recently talked about drones, in the Cult Chordplay. And I also talked about it, like in the Tool Chordplay, the drones of Adam Jones. And here we are, watching Billy Gibbons kind of deconstruct these. Something like this. Basically flirting with A7, kind of A minor 7 too, I guess, if you count that double stop on the G and the B string there. And then it basically moves over a set of strings, and now we're flirting with D, or D minor 7. You've got this clever little thing. It's basically flirting with E7, and then you're going to kind of play with D7 right there. And then come down, this kind of open position, A minor pentatonic lick. And then go right back into that funky, intro part. Alright, the last example, of course, is Jesus Just Left Chicago, also from Tres Hombres. And I couldn't show Waitin For The Bus and not follow it, with this song, because those two songs have been paired on classic rock radio for a very long time. And it's the slow, prodding blues, something like this. started with that little bend on that B flat, and then just goes into, you know, a G major chord. We're just, you know, fretting the 3rd fret there on the low E, and we're also muting the A with the underside of your, you know, the finger you choose to use. I'm using my 3rd finger right there, and just muting that A string. And then we're going to play those open strings, and then you're going to add part of C major, so it's kind of C over G. Something like that. But then you can also mimic that kind of heartbeat, you know, bass that you hear. And then move over to C major, and you're going to move from C major to an F over C, you know, something like that. And you can continue that kind of heartbeat, you know, bass line. Go back to G. And then basically just kind of roll into an A power chord. And then step up to, you know, a B, and then go to a C power chord. And then right here, we're going to grab B flat, the open G, the low, that low G note right there on the low E string. And then he's doing a turnaround, and he's basically, you know, maintaining this G on the high E string, and then descends F to E flat. Now, if you're curious about turnarounds, I'm actually a big fan of turnarounds. I love blues, you know, and blues turnarounds, and I am going to devote an entire episode in the near future to turnarounds, you know, whether it's in rock or in blues, and you can find them in jazz, and there's a ton of places. But that's a really cool song, and I like kind of, you know, keeping my hands busy, you know, grabbing as many parts as possible to kind of fill it up. You know, it's missing the lead, of course, but as far as the rhythm, you can kind of fatten that up and, you know, mimic the chords, and then also kind of mimic that bass too. And that's fun, you know, to kind of sit there and challenge, you know, your hand, like, how much can I create, you know, all at the same time? All right, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of ZZ Top, and definitely I'm a big, you know, Billy Gibbons fan, ZZ Top fan. Their music just feels good, it makes you feel good. It's got a good energy. There's always like a groove and some kind of funky, you know, little thing going on with the rhythm and everything. And then when Billy starts, you know, grabbing a solo, and it's, you know, full of emotion, and he's got always has great tone, good feel, you know, just a phenomenal, you know, guitarist and frontman, and, you know, a showman and a songwriter and everything, and definitely a legend, you know, on the electric guitar, you know, front or whatever. I mean, he's definitely, you know, respected. Everybody loves Billy Gibbons, everybody, and there's a reason, you know, because he's a badass, you know, he really is. He's just cool, and, you know, he's got this style and this vibe, and, you know, phenomenal person too. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.